This is Primitive Outfitting, and you are listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Chicken, wow, wow.
Wow.
Nice.
And I'm not standing on my high horse saying I shoot a self-bow, because there's no way in hell I'm shooting a self-bow. When I say that, I mean that in a good Christian way.
As far as Cecil goes with me, I mean, I could really give a crap about that lion too much.
And all I was looking at was the tip of Aron's arrow. And it was like this and this, and then it was kind of shaking, and then it went boom, solid like a rock. And I'm like, oh.
He's like, I got to know if you hit anything or not. You never really show excitement, because I don't. I'm kind of always mellow. And this thing, ready to jerk a tear. I was running around like an idiot. Woo! You know, if you ever talk to anybody from Africa, they're all about hunting lions because they eat people. Yeah. The compound, I have total confidence. With this thing, I'm like, yeah, maybe. But the way that America works, we're so soft, like softer than baby. All of us, basically.
The shooting errors, I'm going to call it Matrix effect. I panicked.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Gritty Bowman Podcast. I am your sort of host, Aron Snyder. Your real host is behind the camera. Today, we're talking about bow setups, what Brian and I ended up choosing or picking for a bow and why, as well as some of the different components, things like that. So right now, this is a carbon Defiant 34. A lot of guys ask why we chose the Defiant 34 over some of the other options. I'm going to go into that, 70 to 80 pounds, whatever the case may be. So, well, right now we're kind of going back between two different sights. Brian has the TrueBall Excel AccuTouch sight. Right now I have a Spot Hog on my bow. Both are great sights. We're really kind of trying to figure out which one we like the best to run for the season. Stabilizers. Right now I've got an AAE on here. This is a hot rods is what they call it. Brian has I'll pull it out. Brian's is pretty unique. It's like it extends.
It reminds me of our
Tripod legs.
yeah, what is this? The
Gitzo
legs, yeah.
Yep. And then Brian's got the gripper from AAE for an offset bracket. I've got on mine, it's actually a fuse, but it's the same principle. But anyhow, so right now, Brian has got a 70-pound Carbon Defiant 34. He's at 28 inches of draw length and 72 pounds. He's got the the Excel AccuTouch 5-pin sight. He's got a Hammski Hybrid Hunter Pro micro tune rest or micro adjust rest. He's shooting right now. Actually, you're shooting. You have a Scott Mongoose.
I have a Scott and a Carter.
Scott and a Carter.
Release.
Now my bow. We both have Brian setting up two bows that are identical. I think a primary and a backup, both identical, 70 pounds. This is a 70-pound bow. I'm at a 29-inch draw length, number 2 cam. 72, 73 pounds. My other bow, same setup, except it's 80 pounds. We already did an arrow podcast, but Brian's shooting Black Eagle Spartans. I'm shooting Outlaws and Carnivores. Outlaws out of this bow, Carnivores out of my 80-pounder. This is a Spot Hog sight. This is not the sight I'm going to probably end up with full time on this. I'm probably going to just shoot a Spot Hog Hogget 7-pin. It's probably my favorite sight of all time. I've got a Hammski Hybrid Hunter Pro as well. I've used Hammski rests forever. It's really the only rest I'll use now. I'm on their staff now, actually, but I mean, as far as I've had the best luck with Hammski, whether when I bought them or now I don't have to pay for them. I've got an offset bracket on this one. More or less what I did is screwed around with the weights to where it just pops level quicker. Or super fast if I'm on, angled terrain or whatever you want to call it. I've got a 3-pin sight on this bow. Normally I shoot 7 though. I may use this one end up keeping it set up for 3Ds. But the big thing, I think one of the biggest questions we get is 70 or 80 pounds. Like, why? Now, Brian, why don't you chime in on your experience shooting 80?
Yeah, 80 just
couple of things going on there. Like 80 is a tough bull, and I experienced that a few times this year. And my draw length is probably a half inch too long, and the two together made it really tough. It's fine at the range. In fact, I didn't really notice anything when we're practicing or shooting at a range, unless I did an all-day like total archery challenge course, and then I was pretty fatigued halfway through. So, but where it really killed me was there were a number of opportunities where I had to pull a bow in an awkward position, or after hiking for a week and being super tired and having a lot of clothes on, thick clothes, and then trying to draw the bow. That extra poundage just made it much more difficult to kill an animal.
Yeah, and I've gotten critiqued, or what, I've always shot 80 to 100 pound bows for hunting forever. And I've shot anywhere between 60 and 70 pound bows for target shooting. I am of the opinion you shoot whatever bow you're comfortable with. A lot of guys that shoot heavy, 80 pound bows get some criticism about why you don't need to, or what, and all of that's true. You don't need to shoot a 70 pound bow or an 80 pound bow if you can put the arrow in the right spot. You don't have to shoot a 70 pound bow to either. You can shoot whatever you want, but I shoot 80 pounds because I shoot it super consistent. And if I ever have an arrow that may not hit right where I want it to, the chances of it getting to something important are a little bit better than they would be if I was shooting 70 pounds. Having said that, both of them do the job. 70 is plenty of weight.
Yeah, I find even when I'm at lifting weights and stuff like that and in the gym, that static holds are not, I don't excel at those as much as I do as a dynamic lift. So the pull is great, but then I sit there and hold it, and even with the let off, it just, I can't hold it as long as I can a 70.
Probably a fast twitch, slow twitch muscle thing or something. I don't know where I've shot 80 pounds forever or heavier, so it doesn't bug me holding it back or shooting it. But
and that's the other thing is, I don't practice as much as I should, and I don't practice nearly as much as you do, and that's changing. But I think if you're going to pull 80 something pounds, that it takes conditioning to get there.
Yeah, I really hate when people do what I did when I was younger. I talked about this in the last podcast. Jerry Rose taught me how to shoot. He actually works at Butch's Sports World off and on in Illinois. I was shooting 85, 95 pounds out of a HOYT deviator. Mm-hmm. No idea what I was doing. I could pull it back. I couldn't be consistent, but it's a man thing, right? Biggest, toughest, shooting 23-17s. Really, I would have been a lot better off. When you get overbowed, whether it be poundage or draw length, it creates target panic in bad form. And so I always suggest to guys, if you're going to shoot, I'd rather see a guy shoot 65 pounds with a two-blade cut-on-contact fixed blade than 80 pounds with a mechanical. Because if they can't, when I say that, meaning I'd rather see them shoot 65 pounds accurately with a two-blade cut-on-contact fixed-blade broadhead than 80 pounds inaccurately with some giant mechanical. And that's generally, anymore, it's kind of like the backpack thing. What's your lightest pack, not what's your most comfortable or whatever. Bows are the same way. A lot of times guys will walk in and say, what's your fastest bow? That'll be the number one question at the range. And they should be asking what's the most accurate bow. A slow 10 is better than a fast 5, like you hear on the 3D course or whatever the case. That's why we chose the Carbon Defiant 34s. Bigger brace height, longer to axle, more forgiving. Not the fastest bow in the world. I think the IBO at 325, and not a speed demon by any stretch of the means. But, I've been flinging sticks out of a recurve at 180 feet a second, so 280 is a gift from God right now. It's like I'm super pumped. I've never been a speed freak guy. I came up in the days where there was a 280 foot per second speed limit in the tournaments I shot at. So I've gotten used to that 280. I really like that 265 to 280 foot per second kind of speed for the arc of my arrow for hunting. It's also extremely difficult to get a fast arrow to tune with a fixed blade broadhead. trying to get a fixed blade broadhead over 300 feet per second to tune is just an epic pain in the butt. And I hear guys tell me they can do it, and I'm proud of them, and that's awesome. I've not had great luck with getting an 80-pound bow shooting 300 plus feet per second to tune. So that's why we got the Defiant 34s. There's nothing wrong with shooting a little bit shorter bow at all, like a 30, 31, 32 inch long axle to axle bow. It's just, for me, I'm more about accuracy than I am maneuverability, and the 34 was great. And Brian, he kind of just went off my recommendation as well, and Evan Williams. Evan at HOYT kind of gave him the same recommendation.
And so did Jeremy Eldridge.
Yeah, and Jeremy. For me, like my 80-pounder, some guys asked me, why didn't I shoot a turbo at 75 compared to a Defiant 34 at 80? Well, I don't mind the weight, and I would rather have a forgiving 80-pound bow than a critical 75-pound bow. A lot of guys that walk in and buy a 70-pound turbo, like a Defiant turbo, you really need to stop and ask yourself, do you really want to shoot a bow that critical for an extra few feet per second, or shoot one that's a little bit less forgiving, a little bit more accurate, and you just won't have quite as much speed? I always err to the side of caution and go with accuracy.
So Anthony Spencer, my buddy Anthony, he's like you. He geeks out on all this stuff, and shooting is, it's like a daily ritual and all of that. And he ended up going with the turbo, the HOYT, because he wanted the poundage around 60 pounds. He wanted to just pull something really light. And he's a big, strong dude.
Yeah.
But he's like, I just want something that's super light, but achieves similar speeds to what I'm getting at 80 pounds with the Defiant 34.
Yeah, at 60 pounds won't get him there, but he'll be faster than other options for dang sure, yeah.
And so he kind of waited out and gave up some of that, but could lower the poundage, though, and because of the cam system, still maintain a faster speed.
Yeah.
But what he said was, for him, and he's owned a lot of bows, this is his favorite bow he's ever owned.
Yeah.
So that surprised me, and he's not a speed bow guy. He doesn't like turbo cams and that kind of stuff, but he's like, this one's a little different. So I'm kind of curious to shoot it, but after talking to Jeremy and Evan and stuff like that, I went with the 34.
Well, and sometimes it's holding weight, and that may not be the case of Anthony, but, if you, like when I shot indoor tournaments, I would shoot, instead of shooting a hunting bow at 80% or 75% let off at 80 pounds, I would be shooting 60 pounds at 65% let off, meaning as far as holding weight, there's a certain window of holding weight that I shoot best at. And that, obviously, there's things change as time's gone on. Cams have changed, the aggressiveness of the draw cycle, the rollover. There's a lot of things that change along with that. Another thing that I'm super critical of is as far as the angle the stream comes across my face. Since I came up in the days of like a HOYT Aspen, a Striker, an Ultratech, a little bit longer bows, back when I was shooting a 38-inch bow when I started, or when I really got going, a 38-inch bow was a short bow. I had a Cybertech from HOYT. It was like 36 inches axle to axle, and that was, it was even, I think my Ultratech, which was one of my favorite bows ever, was 37 and a half. The Aspen was like 43. But what it is when I come to full draw, the V of the string, the angle it comes across my face, the peep height, things like that, I'm pretty critical that that's at a certain setting, and usually a 34 plus inch bow gets me to where I want to be, where I'm comfortable. Again, things have changed so much since I've started, and it, a 34 inch bow when I started was like, it wasn't an option. Bows have changed past parallel M. That was a thing of the past. We were shooting like HOYT command cams were like the thing to have. These big ass hatchet cams. That once Matthews came out with a single cam, which I never was a huge fan of, but Matthews came out with a single cam, and everybody kind of got away from two cams. There was hybrid cams and everything else, and then Cooper. I'm skipping around a lot here as far as technology, but Darren Cooper, as well as the other engineers at HOYT, came out with a cam and a half, and then that, for me, was a big
kind of put me back to where I wanted to be rather than shooting a single cam. So anyway, bow setup wise, go ahead.
No, nothing.
Bow setup wise, really, if you're short, you can shoot a shorter bow. If you're tall, you should probably shoot a longer bow, meaning your draw length. If you struggle with weight, you might want to get like a turbo. If you can't shoot like 70 pounds and you're shooting a little bit less weight, you might want to get a turbo. If you don't want a turbo and you're shooting 60, 65 pounds, which is plenty of weight, you want to start looking at shooting a cut-on contact broadhead, things like that. But as far as with us, what it looks like, we're definitely shooting Black Eagle arrows. I think you're going to shoot the Spartans or the Outlaws. I'm going to shoot the Outlaws and the Carnivores. We're going to shoot Hammski arrow rests, either a True Ball XL or a True Ball XL, meaning a AccuTouch sight, or the Spot Hogs. Releases, I'm going to shoot the Hammski drop tine, and you've been screwing around with a few of them. I've been shooting a True Ball 3-finger HT back tension for practice.
So a couple things I'd like you to touch on is the Hammski rest, because this is the first time I've ever used one, and I've used Trophy Taker and Limb Driver in the past few years.
Yeah,
and then I use QAD. And this right here is by far the best rest I've ever used. So I'm just curious, because it's not really mainstream as much. Like, I don't hear about it or see it as much, but this thing is awesome.
So this is the Hybrid Hunter Pro, and
what makes it so awesome? Like, I have some ideas, but
they just sent these to us for our backup bows, Andrew Munsell. When you have a tournament archer like Tim Gillingham, and you have that also hunts, and then Andrew as well as Sean, which are the three guys that originally started Hammski. When you have three guys that actually know what they're doing, design something, it's usually going to leave out a lot of the things you're left wanting for with other arrow rests. So what they were able to do with this is have enough adjustments on it to where you could change the angle of your launcher, for example. So not only could you change the height up and down, your gang adjustment, let's say, you could also change the angle of the launcher. You could change the tension, the spring tension of the launcher. On this Hybrid Hunter Pro, they have a spring right here, which helps for bounce back. You can loosen an Allen and you can flip this to go from top and bottom limb, whether you wanted to use the top or the bottom limb, to operate your arrow rest. So there's multiple different things that make this arrow rest great. For me, the biggest one is durability. The thing never breaks. It's a little bit heavy. The Hybrid Hunter Pro is not. When I say heavy, the old Versa Rest, the one I used before, was a little bit heavy compared to its other ones. It never broke on me. The Hybrid Hunter Pro, it kind of is the best of all worlds. It's not overly heavy. It's fairly lightweight. It's about $159. So it is expensive, but not nearly expensive as the other one. It has all the adjustments that the other one does. The other models do. There's different launcher options you can get, but for me, durability and the option of really being able to tune the arrow rest. If you look at like a bow, one of the things that's nice with HOYT is you can yoke tune, or at least yoke tune your top cam, where with some of the other bows, without going into a tuning seminar, the only thing you're left with is twisting the cable guard or shimming the cam over, which is a pain in the butt. You'll get arrow rests like that where you get some adjustment, but not quite enough if you're really getting down to the nitty-gritty, especially where with the Hammskis you can do whatever you want. They're made in the United States. They're a local company for Colorado, and they're great guys. And they also make several other products that are really, really handy. But either way, what makes it great is it's super adjustable and that thing doesn't ever break. The one you were using, it came loose and fell apart. And
it was a disaster in Alberta. Yeah. And I was about ready to cry.
It was funny for me. Well, I was trying to figure out why he kept missing the target. And I'm watching him shoot, and I'm like, that wasn't a perfect shot, but it wasn't a horrible shot. And then you're like 2 feet over the top of the target.
Yeah, I'd hit a bullseye, and then I'd shoot. I completely missed the block. And I'm what the heck? And it's getting in my head now because I practiced the day before out in the meadow in the field, and I'm like, Aaron, I don't know, man. I'm like, and you're checking the timing and everything. You're like, no, everything looks good. And I'm thinking, So you were watching me shoot, and I'm like, oh, finally, I hit like 2 in the center.
Yeah.
And then I wing one way off into the bushes, and I'm like, what the heck?
Did you figure out your launcher was loose, or did I?
You did. You leaned over, and you grabbed the bow, and you were just inspecting it. You did it like 5 times, but the 5th time, you're like, you touched the launcher, and it fully slid like a 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch.
Probably should have caught that a little earlier.
Left or right. I was like, oh, no wonder.
Well, and the problem, it's not a problem, but when you get used to, which is going to sound like an epic sales pitch, when you get used to running a Hammski, you don't look at that anymore.
Yeah.
They never, hardly ever come loose or whatever, where I remember I kept looking at your sight. I was trying to figure out if your sight was coming loose.
And that's the other part. The other thing I was going to talk, I wanted you to touch on was the sights.
Yeah.
And so, but before we move there, one thing that I like about the Hammski is as the launcher pops up,
Yeah.
there's no way for the arrow to fall off the launcher.
Yeah, there's no gaps.
There's no gaps.
Yeah.
And my other one, it fell off all the time, and it hit the riser.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Which can be really a problem, because if you draw through, sometimes it'll wedge. Your launcher will come up and your arrow will get stuck in the below, and then you got to force it up. I've had to grab it with my teeth and reef it up through and put it back on.
On that mule deer, Alberta, I drew sideways,
Yeah.
and then it fell off the launcher.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I uprighted, I had to like finger it back on
Yeah.
to take the shot. Well, with the Hammski, I can draw completely sideways.
Yep.
And when I stand up, it's going to level itself out. It's also quiet too. Like when I draw the bow back, it doesn't make any noise. And the last rest did.
Yeah, this one has a hard candy shell on the launcher, which keeps it quiet compared to metal on metal, metal on carbon. Yeah, I mean it's done.
Cool.
I've hunted with it all over the world, and it's done really well.
It's bomb proof too. So the sight, I shot the Trophy Taker option 4, I think.
Yeah.
And I really like the concept behind it, where you have your adjustable pin, and then you have fixed.
Yep.
And they're not in the same housing. But it presented a few challenges. Mostly, it was the fact that we stripped a bunch of stuff and it rattled a lot, made a lot of noise. It's a great idea.
It did make some noise.
And I liked it, but this new sight that I've got.
So what happened was I've always been I've been a spot hog guy. I've shot some black golds too. They've been good. But Big Greg Poole sent this HOYT, this XL AccuTouch to set up my new HOYT, and I felt so horrible for Brian after some of the drama he had went through with the old sight. So I gave him the AccuTouch to use. Sorry, Greg, don't yell at me. And I've got the spot hog on. So the one thing they have is a second and third axis leveling adjustment, and that's without confusing things, we'll go into more depth. That's basically multiple different options. It's so you can level your level on a plane field, meaning flat parallel to the ground, and then you can level it for up and downhill. More or less, as you aim uphill, your bubble could be to the left because it goes in and out. Doing a horrible job at explaining that. And then when you aim downhill, the bubble will be on the right side, so you need to torque your sight housing in
third
or
axis.
out. Second is flat, third axis. Am I saying that right? Yeah, second is just aiming on flat ground, and then third axis is aiming up and down. And really what it means is like on a door jam, if you're aiming, at 80 yards, if you put a 6-inch level on a door jam and it's out 1/8 of an inch, if you continue that 6-inch level, the full 8-foot height of the door, it's going to gain 1/8 inch more and more and more the farther you go. Well, if your level's off, shooting at 80 yards, it can be a foot. Your arrow can hit a foot left or right, depending. And so what it allows you to do is correct for level or for aiming up and down. I really need a few different pieces of equipment to show you how to do that correctly.
Third axis, we can talk about that another time.
Yeah,
but basically, both sites, the Spot Hog and this one, AccuTouch, that they're both they're pretty sweet.
They have more adjustments.
They're durable.
Than you can think of.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm gonna. It's not rattling or losing any parts.
Yeah, no, it's a solid sight. I mean, they were thinking. I mean, for those of you watching, when I'm talking about the second and third axis, second axis is leveling just like this, playing to the ground. Well, as you aim up or downhill, if this rod or this here is bent in or out, your level is not going to be perfect as you aim up and downhill. And so you need to be able to adjust this in or out, which this does. You can adjust it like this, and you can adjust it in and out. It also has micro adjustment, and then it also has these little deals where you can lock in when you're using your slider. So meaning your 60-yard pin comes your 70, 80, 90. So when you're using your gang adjustment or your slider, you can actually lock in 70, 80, 90 with these over here. So we'll go into a greater depth on the AccuTouch later in a little bit more of an in-depth video.
But it is nice. Both the Spot Hog and the AccuTouch, both of them have sliders.
Yeah, this Spot Hog, I have a slider. This one, the one I'll actually hunt with, will be a 7-pin fixed, meaning it's an 80-yard fixed pin. It will not have a slider on my heavy poundage bow. This one here, I've got 20, 30, 40 in pins, and this is a fast eddy. This is kind of a stripped down lightweight version. It does really well, but this has some unique options that only Spot Hog has had. Because they've patented where the pin works on a turret. Each pin, they're bomb proof. Spot Hogs, which is why I always use them. The pins and the body and everything, they never break. You can throw them off cliffs. They are unbelievably strong. And I like the guys over at Spot Hog are great to deal with. So either way, you definitely want to make sure you have. I prefer micro adjust pins, second and third axis adjustment. And then as far as the amount of pins go, shoot what you're comfortable with, whether it be a single pin or a 7-pin sight. Just make sure that you practice a long time before a season starts on your actual setup. Don't just throw a 7-pin sight on and go hunting, because you can get pretty confused with that much crap up in your housing.
Okay. We talked about single pin sights in that podcast with Jeff Lander and Gary.
I'm not a fan.
And Gary explained how he's not a fan either. Yeah. We kind of beat that like a dead horse.
My buddy Henry said, thanks for the name dropping me, because you said I'm the greatest shot ever, I think is what he said. But Henry's got a single pin housing dialed. I mean, the guy, he kills stuff all the time with it. There's always one, right? You always got one, there's always one guy good at something. I mean, but you can't take a collective of, you can't take 50 guys that suck at it and then one that's good one and say, but this guy's good at it, because it doesn't count, because it's skewed. Not taking away from anything. Henry is an amazing shot and he kills tons of stuff with a single pin. But I would say, if you want your best chance of success, the single pin is not it. I would get at least a 3 to 5 pin sight, not get a single pin. There's just too much to go wrong, and
it's funny. Like, I've swung full circle,
yeah,
from the single pin, and now I kind of want to try the 7-pin and just be all fixed.
Well, and it's not like, I mean, if Henry and I went out on a 3D course and Henry can shoot well. It's not like there's going to be a huge variance, unless he's shooting at his home course of Golden, where he has everything memorized. But there's not going to be a huge variance. He's going to be able to dial into the yard a little bit better on 3Ds. But when it comes to walking out in the woods and you range something and say 46 yards, I'm going to shoot faster than he is, because he's going to have to dial it. But he's also going to be precise at further distance, and Henry will shoot things a little bit farther than other people because he has the ability. And so when you get in that farther distance, pin gapping can start to suck, where you're like, splitting the 70 and 80 or whatever.
Totally.
So there's pros and cons, but if I was going to give you a suggestion, if you walked into the range, I'd be like, hell no, do not buy a single pin sight. It's just not a good way to go with a slider.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. I mean, these are just kind of basic things. We're going to do more in-depth videos as time goes on. It's just,
you're getting bombarded with emails and questions, so hopefully this reduces those.
Yeah, it is. And I don't mind the emails and questions. If we can
answer all of them with one podcast, that's nice.
Simplifies things, yeah. So, all right. Well, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Stay gritty.
Friends, hunters, outdoorsmen, lend me your ears. Please take this moment to listen to this excerpt from the Gritty Bowman film, Back to Traditions. Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place in time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunter souls, my right to do some of these things myself. What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals in the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it. We want to thank Kifaru, Mountain Ops, HOYT, Vortex, Phelps, Black Eagle Arrows, and Crispy Boots for supporting the Gritty Bowman. We love these companies and the people behind them. They truly make fantastic products. Please support them whenever you can. And as always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.